Hi everyone, my name is Jen. I'm an author and a book reviewer, and today feels a little bit like Christmas because a huge box of books, specifically, oh goodness, this huge box of books just landed on my doorstep. You already know by the title of this video, this is a video where I'm planning to read the Women's Prize Longlist, most hopefully of the Women's Prize Longlist. In fact, as you're watching this, you probably know what's in this box if you followed the prize, but me right now, I don't know what's in this box. I'm filming this introduction about a week before the end of February. The Women's Prize have very kindly sent me the long list in advance. I have worked with them before. This video isn't sponsored, but I have worked with them before, and every year for the last 8 years, I have reviewed the Women's Prize shortlist, sometimes on here, but mostly for Toast Clothing, where I write articles about books. So because of my job, they've sent me this early. I've never received the long list early before, so I'm really excited. It's prize season. This is the first prize. That's a lie, it's not the first prize this year that I'm excited about. The Barbellion I was excited about, but that was like December into January. So this is the first proper 2023 prize that I am getting my teeth into. So they haven't sent me a list of what's inside the box, and I thought we could just unbox it together and we can talk about the titles, and then I will go ahead and read them. Because, as I said, you probably already know what's in here if you follow the prize. I'll try and keep this section a bit short so we can get to the meat of the video later, where I actually, read the books. If I had to guess, there are so many books eligible for this year's prize. Some books I expect may be in here. Could be Briefly a Delicious Life by Nell Stevens, Woman Eating by Claire Coder, Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell, A Spell of Good Things by Ayobami Adebayo, Nightcrawling by Layla Motley, Ghost Music by Anne Yu, maybe Latvona by Tessa Moshfegh, though I haven't read that one yet, and possibly Vladimir by Julia May Jonas, which I think is eligible. The criteria is books published between the 1st of April last year and the 31st of March this year. Okay, so those are some of my predictions. I'm gonna try and do like a tombola type thing where I reach into this box without actually looking at it. I mean, could you imagine if this box isn't actually from the Women's Prize today and I just start pulling random things out? I'm pretty sure it's from them because that's the parcel that I'm expecting today. And it does feel like there are books in here. Okay. Here's one. What is this? Oh, this is Children of Paradise by Camilla Grudova. I have read her short story collection, The Doll's Alphabet, which was published by Fitzcarraldo a few years ago now. Let me read the blurb and then I can summarize it for you. Ooh, this sounds fun. Okay, it's about a woman called Holly who applies for a job at the Paradise, which is one of the city's oldest cinemas, and it's full of, it says oddballs who work there, and she has to try and befriend them, and then when she becomes one of them, she starts to haunt the corridors after hours along with everyone else. That's all I want to know about that one. That's one that I definitely want to read. I should have said, which I don't think I said, that what I plan to do in this video is read all of the long list books that appeal to me. I will read all of the shortlist books, regardless of whether or not they appeal to me further down the line, if any books that didn't appeal to me make it onto the shortlist. But for the long list video, because there are 16 books, I will be reading the ones that really speak to me, for want of a less cliched phrase. And also tension. I know that there are only 13 books in this box because 3 of the books haven't reached their warehouse yet. So another 3 will be coming in the post at some point, but I wanted to film the introduction. So that's the first one. Okay, we're off to a good start. Let's find another one. Okay, another short one. Oh, this is Sophie Mackintosh. Okay, this is Cursed Bread. I read her book, The Water Cure. That was her debut, I think, a few years ago. And this one, I believe, is about a community that is poisoned by some bread. Do I want to know more than that? Ooh, I don't know, I'm just very excited. It says, audacious and mesmerizing, Cursed Bread is a fevered confession, an entry into memory's hall of mirrors, a fable of obsession and transformation. So it's about Elodie, who is the baker's wife, a plain, unremarkable person, largely ignored by her husband. She burns with the secret desire to be extraordinary. Amazing. Okay, that is another one that I definitely want to read. Oh, there's another short one here. Oh, Homesick by Jennifer Croft. This is one that I own but haven't read yet. This is published by Charco Press. Jennifer is the translator of Olga Tokarczuk's work, so she has won the International Booker with her. But this is her book, which is a coming-of-age story about 2 sisters. The sister that we're following mainly, I think, is Amy, yes, who shares everything with her little sister Zoe, not only a private language, but also an alluring young teacher. Then I think Zoe becomes ill and someone close to them dies. So it's about all of that. Definitely want to read that because it was on my shelf anyway. Let's reach into, well, this is the big one. Oh, The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. I have already read this one and I very much enjoyed it. I'm really thrilled that she's made this list again. That makes me happy. Okay, so this is a book I have already read and I will talk about at some point in this video, but it is historical fiction set in the 1500s, and it's about a woman called Lucrezia who is married off to a man who she believes is trying to kill her, and it's based on real life. So there's that. Let's reach in for another one, another hardback. Oh, okay, this is Glory by NoViolet Bulawayo. I read this one last year as well when it was shortlisted for the Booker Prize. It was shortlisted for the Booker. This was a novel that unfortunately wasn't for me, and again I will talk about it a bit more in this video, but it is a novel inspired by Mugabe and politics in Zimbabwe, and is also a bit of a riff on Animal Farm by George Orwell. Okay, let's reach in again. Oh, okay, this is Memphis by Tara M. Stringfellow. Oh, the sun has decided that it wants to be part of this video. Let me just quickly close one of the curtains. Okay, I think that helped a little. So this is about a family called the North family. It's set in Memphis, and it's about a woman called Joan who is going back to Memphis after being there as a child. She says she doesn't remember it, but as she returns, things slowly start coming back to her. I don't really want to know more than that, but it says it's a celebration of enduring strength of female bonds, of what we pass down from mother to daughter, epic in scope yet intimate in detail. It is a vivid portrait of 3 generations of a southern black family, as well as an ode to the city they call home. That sounds great. I'll be reading that in this video. So we are having a good hit rate so far. Oh, another short one, a short one in here. Oh, I am excited because I've been wanting to read this one for a long time. It's called I'm a Fan by Sheena Patel. This is a novel all about social media. And I think it's about people who are in a relationship, but in several relationships, cheating on each other, but then keeping an eye on each other's social media and how that messes with their heads. Yes, I want to read this one. Thank you very much. Okay, right, into the box again, another hardback. What do we have here? Ooh, Black Butterflies by Priscilla Morris. I haven't heard of this one either. So this is set in Sarajevo in the spring of 1992, and it's following Zora, an artist who's deciding whether or not she should leave because of war there. And the author, Priscilla Morris, is of Yugoslav and Cornish parentage. She grew up in London, spending summers in Sarajevo. So, okay, yes, I would like to read that one too. Excellent, onto the pile it goes. I'm setting myself quite a task. Okay, they're all falling on top of each other. I'm trying not to look. Okay, what do we have here? Wandering Souls by Cecile Pin. This one is also one that is on my TBR, and I know it's Fourth Estate's big release this year. So I know that this is about 3 siblings who leave Vietnam just after American troops have left, and they end up in various different countries and finally finish in Britain during Thatcher's time, and it's about their experience of that. So yes, I would like to read that one too. Another hand into the tombola. We've got another hardback here. What is this? Oh, okay, this is Natalie Haynes. So this is Stone Blind. This is Medusa's story. And I have to say, I am not huge on Greek mythology retellings, but I really enjoyed her novel, 1,000 Ships. And when I read that, whenever that was shortlisted for the prize, maybe 4 years ago now, that's a guess. Maybe it wasn't 4 years ago. Okay, so yes, I will definitely give this one a go. How many is that now? We've 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there should be 4 left in this box. All right, so we have The Bandit Queens by Parini Shroff. I haven't heard about this one at all. Okay, the first line of the blurb is, Geeta is believed to have killed her vanished husband, a rumour she hasn't bothered trying to correct because a reputation like that can keep a single woman safe in rural India. I don't want to know more than that. That sounds great. Yes, thank you. Okay. All right. Another one. Here we go. Oh, we've got Laline Paull. Okay, so she is the author of The Bees, which... Did that win the Women's Prize? I just looked it up and she did not win the women's prize, but she was shortlisted. So this is told from the point of view of a dolphin. Now I have to admit, that gives me pause, but I know how much The Bees was loved by people. I haven't read that one myself, but I know how much people loved it. So I'm going to give this one a go. It's told from the point of view of a dolphin who decides to leave her pod and go out on her own because she's struggling to communicate with the other dolphins in her pod because she has a specific kind of deafness. Okay, so I will give this one a go and see what I think of it. All right, another hardback. What do we have here? Oh, Trespasses by Louise Kennedy. This is a book that was talked about quite a lot last year. I know that this is an Irish book set during the Troubles and it's about ordinary people trying to live ordinary lives in extraordinary times. So yeah, I will definitely give this one a go as well. Okay, so we're down to the last one. And this is The Dog of the North by Elizabeth McKenzie. I didn't know that she had a new book out. Okay, so she is the author of The Portable Veblen, which was shortlisted for the Women's Prize in 2016. I think it was 2016. And I really didn't get on with that book. She's a very Marmite author. It's very satirical, which is so subjective. Sorry, my leg is going to sleep. So subjective. So I will give this one a go because maybe the writing style will be very different from Portable Veblen and see if I get on with it. I mean, it's got a dog in it, so maybe I will love it. Oh wait, I'm not even sure it has a dog in it. There is a dog here, but the Dog of the North is apparently this van. So it's about a woman called Penny who is having a bit of a crisis, several crises. Her marriage is over, she's quit her job, her parents are missing in the Australian outback, and her grandmother has been found in possession of a sinister weapon, and she's trying to deal with all of these things. Okay, all right. I'll give that one a go and see if, as I said, if the writing style is different to her other one. Okay, so this is very exciting. So, as I said before, 3 of the books are still on their way to me. So if you're very confused right now thinking, you didn't talk about 3 books I know are longlisted, those are on their way. So out of the 13 that I have right now, 2 of them I've already read, 1 I really enjoyed, 1 not so much, and then 11 I do want to try. So that is very good. I'm very happy about this. So over the course of the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be reading as many of these as the sun is back. I'm going to be reading as many of these as I can, and I'm going to be talking to you about them. I will say that at the moment, I am going in for an operation next week. I'm currently on lots of medication and I imagine I'm going to get quite sick in this video. So just to prepare you, I'm not going to be talking about that as we go, but I just wanted to flag it because it will be obvious. I will be ill and I imagine that most of this video will be filmed from my bed. So please do be prepared to get acquainted with lots of my fabulous pajamas. It also means that I probably won't be able to film lots of B-roll footage taking you out and about around London, but we'll see how we get on. We might have to get inventive with the B-rolls and the cutaways and all of that. Okay, this is going to keep me occupied during quite an emotionally and physically difficult time, and I invite you to join me for that too. Thank you for keeping me company. If you're new here, please do pull up a seat, and I will be back to talk to you about these books once I've read one of them, or once the other 3 arrive on my doorstep, whichever one comes first. I'm excited. Does anybody else name their neighborhood cats? Because we do. We have names for about, I don't know, maybe 20, 25 different cats, and that one that you just saw is called Marmalade. That's what we call her. And she's just so adorable because she does the same thing every time. She sees me coming. She's always sitting on what I presume is her front step, and she runs down the pavement meowing, really excited, and then as soon as she gets close to me, she pretends she doesn't care anymore for about 10 seconds and then flumps down on the ground and demands to be petted. She's just a lovely little Phewf, but I didn't really embarrass myself, slightly embarrassed myself the other day because I was walking down one road and one of the cats that we have named was there, and I didn't realise there was anyone behind me. I thought it was just on the street on my own. So I said hi Steve to him and was saying, you know, speaking in my cat voice, which is yeah, not something that you really want other people to hear, I suppose. And I didn't realise there was a man behind me, and he said, oh, is he called Steve? I always wonder what these cats are called. I didn't know he was called Steve. Hi Steve. And I didn't know how to tell him, I don't think he's actually called Steve. Probably, you know, probability wise, that's just what I call him. I have no idea what his name is. I'm just the local cat lady who names all of the cats. So I didn't say anything at all, and I just, you know, said, yeah, this is Steve. And then I wasn't sure if the guy was taking the mick out of me, like maybe he was the owner of the cat and knew fine well that he wasn't called Steve. I don't know. I've overthought this. Good morning. I have read a book. I have read I'm a Fan by Sheena Patel, and this book is a little bit of a ride. It's a very short book. It's about 200 pages, and our narrator is someone who is obsessed with this man who is famous, and he's married, also has at least one other girlfriend, which he tells her about constantly, and she can't help but make herself very available to him, which kind of puts him off her, and she's always waiting for his call, and then she becomes very obsessed, stalking both his wife and also the woman that he wants to be with, who is unavailable, his unavailable girlfriend. She's his available girlfriend, he also has an unavailable one. It is a hot mess, and the narrator in this is infuriating. She's infuriating. She reminded me a lot actually of the narrator of My Year of Rest and Relaxation. It has a lot of commentary on social media and what it means to be present. It also has a lot of discussion about race and privilege and performative self online with regards to those things in particular, which was really great. It's the kind of story that just makes you want to scream though, because she keeps making very, very poor decisions, but that means it's a very well written book, because if it wasn't, I wouldn't care and it wouldn't annoy me. Here's an example. I daydream constantly about him. I want the man I want to be with to change. I send him podcasts, quotes, screenshots, videos nudging him in the direction I want him to go in. I fantasize and fall in love with a version of him I'm not sure exists outside of my imagination. He is constantly failing in comparison to this person I know he could be. If he could only stop being exactly who he is, we could be happy. It's funny because of how ridiculous it is, but there is also a sharp truth, a barbed truth to a lot of what she is saying, and she's kind of calling the reader out on it, because she treats people appallingly and then she gets very upset when people treat her in exactly the same way. And I think that she's really saying to the reader, I bet you're sitting here reading this inside of my brain and following me on this journey like I'm following all these other people on social media, and you're sitting there thinking, I'm better than you. I would never do any of these things, which is a domino effect because she's feeling those things about other characters. It's like looking into an infinity mirror, and that makes it very uncomfortable. So yes, I enjoyed this one. I thought that it was really, really good. I would recommend it for fans of My Year of Rest and Relaxation, and also Boy Parts by Eliza Clark. It's like those two things mushed together. I have to go for a pre-op appointment today, and this particular hospital is right on the Thames. So here is a little bit of footage of Tower Bridge, and I will come back to you when I have read some more. Hi, it is a couple of days later. It's the night time, hence the orange light, and we're having a really good start with this long list because I've now read Children of Paradise by Camilla Grudova, and I love this one. I'll rank everything towards the end, but at the moment we're on an up trajectory, and I already really enjoyed the first book, so this is great. This is about a woman called Holly who goes to get a job at an old cinema called the Paradise, and she doesn't really have any friends, and this job and the people that she works with become her whole entire world. It's almost like they are cut off from the rest of civilization. It's really interesting. Now, the title of this book is an old film, and each of the chapters has an old film as the heading as well. And I'm not really up on classic cinema, so there are probably references in this book that I didn't particularly get. I don't mean that I didn't understand anything in it, I just mean that there are probably nuggets of things to look out for if you know the films that the chapter headings are referencing. So for instance, there were a couple of chapters where I knew those films, and one of them was Return to Oz, and in that chapter the people who work at the cinema are coming back after a refurbishment and finding it very alien and like it's a whole different place. And then in a chapter called Heathers, a character dies, and so I could see the links there, but it's nothing huge, and you definitely don't need to know loads about cinema in order to enjoy this book. Camilla Grudova, as I said, she wrote a book called The Doll's Alphabet, and I read that and I enjoyed some of the stories, but not all of them. But I adored this book, and I see her compared to Angela Carter quite a lot. And to be honest, Angela Carter is a name that is thrown around a lot, and it's not often warranted, but I think that the Angela Carter link here is good. I think it works. I think it's one of those instances where I would agree. Oh, Mr. M is just calling to me, telling me that my dinner is ready, which he has kindly made. So I'm just gonna go and eat that, and then I'll come back. So be right back. I am back, hopefully not with food around my mouth. Don't look too closely if I do. What was I saying? This is the problem with filming clips in 2 bits. Yes, she has earned the Angela Carter reference, definitely. I did pick up on a couple of what I think are references to directors. So at the beginning, when we're introduced to all of the people who work in the cinema, they're all quite eccentric, and I definitely got Wes Anderson voiceover vibes at that point. Let me find it for you. Okay, so here, this is describing one of the characters, who is Otto. He didn't talk to me but bowed whenever he saw me, like a hussar at a ball. He either wore faded button-up black Oxford shirts or wool sweaters full of tiny moth holes, but he looked well put together compared to most of the others. He slicked his short hair back and folded the hem of his trousers over his boots. He always had immaculate white socks that made his ankles glow in the screen, though he didn't realise it. For lunch, he liked to eat sweet corn straight out of the can with a fork. The same with pineapple rings. He also ate bags and bags of pink and white gummies that looked like teeth still attached to gums. And at other points in the book, there are descriptions of characters that remind me of Studio Ghibli. So Iris is the person who owns the cinema, and she comes sometimes and just hangs around. And this reminded me of No Face for some reason. Sometimes Iris would just stand in the foyer or at the bar, staring at one of us blankly, giving a little wave if we looked in her direction. When she wasn't talking, her face had a strange, doll-like emptiness to it, and I imagined her filled with nothing but fluff and maggots. And again here, Iris kept appearing in my dreams. Her body expanded out from the boiler room like dough until it filled every seat and crevice in the paradise. So at first, when Holly joins the cinema, no one really talks to her because they're in their clique, they don't want to engage with her. But then when they establish that she's okay, they start inviting her to these secret screenings they do once all of the customers have left. All of them keep money and drugs that they find left in the cinema after each screening, and a lot of this book is spent with the characters are very high, so they start seeing things. Like Holly imagines that she can find extra screens in the cinema. She'll open the door to, say, the boiler room, and there'll be another screen in there playing a film that she's never seen before. And it's this excellent balance of potential magical realism, but also maybe it's just because they're on drugs and you're trying to work out what's real and what's not. The films that they are watching, projecting for other people, just slowly bleed into the narrative of the book. And Holly talks about the cinema as this creature that they are feeding. She becomes another eye in this creature that we made. And as the dilapidated cinema starts to fall apart, it's like it's a body. The whole cinema smelled like the burnt corpse of an old projector, and we had to spray bottle after bottle of fluorescent pink air freshener until our heads were numb and it was dawn. I kept finding little burnt pieces of meat everywhere. It resembled chicken, not just in the auditorium, but the bathrooms, the halls, even the bar, as if it had fallen from the ceiling. And then in another scene, she keeps finding these fingernails that are just dropped all over the cinema. It's creepy, it's quite disgusting in places. I'm going to bring Moshfegh into the equation again. A lot of this reminded me of Eileen, so if you liked Eileen, then I think you would really enjoy this one too. I did feel like maybe the story petered out at the end, like it didn't know where it was going, but it kind of resembles the trajectory of the characters' lives anyway. They're all lost souls, they don't really know where they're going, and I think maybe that worked because of that. And another layer that's really interesting to this book is at one point they get CCTV and they realise the CCTV is to look at them, not the customers, and make sure they're not stealing stuff. And therefore they get to be the people on film, they get to be the people who are observed. So I just liked all of those different angles. I thought that it was brilliant. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of my favourites from this year's list. So that's where we're at right now. The next book I'm going to pick up is this, which is Homesick by Jennifer Croft, because I'm going in for my operation tomorrow, so I want to take a paperback with me, and I think nearly all of the other ones are hardbacks. I don't think I'm actually going to read, but you know, I can't leave the house without taking a book with me, regardless of whether or not I pick it up. So that's the one I'm going to head to next. I think I may also check out Trespasses on audio. Quite a few of the books aren't out yet. They're coming out the first week of March, so I can't access most of them on audio, but that one's already out. So I think I may start listening to that one on audio too. So I will come back to you whenever I can to talk to you about books. Some. Hi. Mr. M calls these my mushroom pyjamas, but I can't say that I understand why, because I don't think they look like mushrooms at all. They're super soft anyway, so that's nice. I have read 2 more books, which I'm here to talk to you about. So firstly, I read Homesick by Jennifer Croft. This one is about 2 sisters called Amy and Zoe. They're really very close. Amy is the eldest by a couple of years. Zoe then gets cancer, and it's really focused on Amy and how she's dealing with that. Their mother is also quite eccentric and has always been telling them that something terrible is going to happen, basically taking the innocence out of their childhood by telling them inappropriate, horrible things that happen in the world. So they become very anxious about that. And then obviously when Zoe gets cancer, their mother feels like that's what she always expected to happen, because she's always expecting terrible things to happen. She's just surprised it wasn't something that was brought on by other people. Because of the extortionate medical costs, because of Zoe having cancer, they can no longer afford to send the girls to school, so they then homeschool them. So they live this very isolated life. It's told in short fragments like this. And at the beginning, I quite liked it. I'm going to find one page which I highlighted. The night before the girls go back to school, their mum tells them what sex is and reads them a story about a woman in a car crash off a bridge. Good housekeeping says if you crash your car off a bridge, you should rescue your husband from drowning if you can. Because if you have a husband, you can make more children. Whereas if you rescue your child, you'll only ever have that one. Their mum thinks about that a lot. What she would do if they got into a car crash off a bridge. The girls begin to practice how long they can hold their breath when they are alone in their room. It's written like that throughout. The girls thought this, the girls thought that, and it creates this, I suppose, folklore feel to it. But that chasm, that distance really didn't work for me as the book progressed, because it just felt a bit othering and strange, like it was almost tiptoeing into virgin suicides type territory. Let's look at the mental health of these girls and observe them as though we're peering through the window, and it felt really uncomfortable. I don't know if that was the point. Maybe it was the point. Maybe because the girls feel so detached from themselves and their own bodies because of the way that they've been brought up, and also because of Zoe's illness. Like maybe it's because they don't have the words to articulate how they truly feel, in which case I see why this distance is being created. But for me, even with that reasoning, the payoff wasn't quite there. So this one isn't going to be one of my favourites from this list, but I have read this one now. I've also read this book, which is The Bandit Queens by Parini Shroff, and this book was a lot of fun. So in this book, we're following Geeta, who is a woman living in a small rural village in India, and her husband, Ramesh, went missing a few years ago, but everyone thinks that she killed him because he wasn't a very nice guy. People don't really blame her for killing him, and she feels safer knowing that people think that she killed him. It means that people kind of stay away from her a bit, so she's happy for those rumours to spread. She's part of this group of women who are trying to set up their own businesses. They're not necessarily friends at the beginning, but one of these women comes to her door one day and says, hey, so I hate my husband. He abuses me. He's a terrible person. I know you killed your husband. Please share your knowledge, show me your ways, tell me how I can kill him. And Geeta doesn't want to tell her, actually, I didn't kill my husband, because as I said, it's a safety blanket for her. So instead, she pretends to share knowledge and gets embroiled in an actual murder this time. And that happens very near the beginning of the book. It's very funny. In one scene when Geeta's talking to Farah, one of the other women, they're talking about killing their husbands, and Geeta swears, and Farah says, you shouldn't swear. It's very unbecoming for a woman to swear, and she's being serious. But they're talking about, you know, murdering. It's very tongue-in-cheek, but at the same time, it's talking about really important things like male violence against women, and it's talking about the caste system in India as well. You know, sometimes when you read a book and you can imagine it as a film, this would make such a brilliant film. I'm sure that it's going to be made into a film at some point. That balance of serious topics and ridiculousness, I think, works really well. It's not a perfect book. Disability is used as a plot point at a couple of stages in this book, which was a bit awkward. I think that could have been handled differently. But overall, I thought that this book was very enjoyable. I will read you a paragraph that I've highlighted. She did not regret her actions. She resented being put in a position where those were her choices, violence or violation. She didn't want to be built to endure a long-suffering saint tossed by the whims of men. She wanted, for once, not to be handed the short end of the stick by a system that expected gratitude in return. So yeah, if you are in the mood for a feminist revenge thriller, if you enjoyed My Sister the Serial Killer, I think you'll like this book. And this has also reminded me that I really want to read the Japanese book Out, which is a very similar premise, which is about a group of women who work at a factory, and one of them arrives at work one day and admits that she's killed her husband, who was an abusive person, and they all agree that they're going to help her hide the crime. So yes, this one I very much enjoyed. You may have realised when you were watching the first clip, because I just was looking back on it, that I didn't count correctly. So I had received an email from the Women's Prize saying that 3 of the books hadn't reached the warehouse yet. So I was assuming that there were going to be 13 books in that box that arrived, because there should be 16 longlisted books, but 1 more must have arrived before they sent them out, because actually there were 14 in that box that I unboxed at the beginning. So we're only waiting on 2 more books that are going to arrive in the post that are part of the long list. I've just realised filming this, I need to put nail varnish back on my nails. It's something that makes me not feel like myself, and the only reason I ever take it off is if I'm going in for surgery. It's the most frustrating thing about going in for surgery. I'm being facetious, it's not the most frustrating thing. Let me share something absolutely terrifying with you. I've been meaning to film a clip of it every time I go in, because I just can't believe that it exists. But in the entrance hall at Guy's Hospital, there is this, I don't even know what it is, this frightening machine. It just gives me nightmares, so let me just show it to you too. I will insert it on the screen here, you're very welcome. I don't know who decided that this was a good idea to display in the entrance hall of a hospital. I am just, I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, I had an amazing view from my hospital bed, which was a plus, you know. I would pay to stay in a hotel room with that view, so that was nice. Here is that view there. Yes, that was definitely a good distraction. And anyway, I'm home now, and I've been home for a few days. And yes, hopefully I will be out of bed soon. But for the moment, I'm just still resting. But I will come back to you when I have read some more books. And that's all. That's all. Okay, I will see you in a bit. Hi, it is a few days later. These are my favourite pyjamas because they're flannel and they're super soft. Oh yeah, it turned out that the anaesthetist was not so good with my IV. So I have got the final 2 books for the Women's Prize. Those have arrived in the post now, so I'm going to show you those. I tried 2 books that I decided are not for me, so I'm not going to finish them. They were books that I thought probably weren't going to be for me, but I wanted to give them a go anyway. And I was really surprised by another book. So that's what this segment is. So the last 2 books that have been longlisted, which, as I said at the beginning, I'm sure you know by this point, but they are Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. This is a retelling of David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. I have tried with Dickens. I've talked about Dickens before. I enjoy the story arcs for the whole, but as a whole. But his writing style just absolutely bores me to tears. And I know that that is heresy for some people, so I'm sorry. But I've tried with so many of his, and I have read some of his in full when I was at uni. And for pleasure, I have tried reading David Copperfield before, and I haven't got farther than, I don't know, maybe the first fifth. And I tried hard. I even listened to the audiobook narrated by Richard Armitage. If that's not going to make you like Charles Dickens, I don't know what's going to make you like it. Anyway, I have seen adaptations. I especially liked, I was going to say the most recent one, but they make them so often, I don't even know if it's the most recent one anymore, with Dev Patel. So I have some knowledge of David Copperfield, but not a huge amount. So I'm probably going to miss subtle references in this that would probably heighten your enjoyment if you are a Dickens fan, but I'm hoping that it obviously should stand on its own 2 feet anyway, so I'm hoping I will still enjoy it. And then the final one is Fire Rush by Jacqueline Crooks, and this is a novel set, I think, at least at the beginning in London in the 1970s, following a woman who really loves music. And I listened to an audio sample of this, which I think actually has music in it. I don't know if that's just at the beginning of the chapters or whatever, but the narrator sounded brilliant, so I might listen to this one on audio, or I might read it in physical form. I don't know. Anyway, those are the 2 final books. Now, the 2 books I've decided are not for me. Pod by Laline Paull. This is the one that's told from the point of view of a dolphin, and I just can't suspend my disbelief. I can't get into it. If it's shortlisted, I'll come back to it, but this one isn't for me, at least at the moment. And Stone Blind by Natalie Haynes. As I said at the beginning, I'm not hugely into Greek mythology retellings, and maybe I feel like I've been a bit oversaturated with them as someone who doesn't enjoy them very much, because I have followed prizes and they often make it, and I have a lot of respect for Natalie Haynes, for Pat Barker, for Madeline Miller. Out of their books, Circe has definitely been my favourite, and I think that that's because her story is quite isolated and it's not as sweeping as other retellings. It's not as if I feel I don't understand what's going on. I do have basic knowledge of Greek mythology, but I feel if you're really, really into it, you already are equipped with so much more ability to connect and to care, and that's what I find difficult with them, that I often feel like I'm so much further back from the book itself. Maybe it's also because I love intertextuality and I love that stuff, and I feel like I'm not getting the most out of these that I would, and that's not the fault of the book really, it's just we're not as compatible as I would like us to be. So I am going to put this one down as well, and again I will revisit it if it makes the shortlist. But the surprise for me, I'm so surprised, it's The Dog of the North by Elizabeth McKenzie. As I said, I read her book The Portable Veblen because it was shortlisted for the Women's Prize back in 2016, and me and the writing style, we did not gel. And I don't have that book anymore. I was gonna maybe look up a sample and see if maybe my taste has changed, or maybe this book is very different. But the humour in this, I thought it was really funny. I had a great time reading this. It is so readable, so readable. I whizzed through it. It was ridiculous. If you are looking for a ridiculous, joyful, bonkers thing to read, then I think I would recommend this. So we're following Penny, who has recently divorced her husband, and she's going to visit her grandma to help her sell her house, except her grandma keeps changing her mind about wanting to sell her house. And it's impossible to describe because one ridiculous situation leads to another ridiculous situation. I was going to compare it to, you know, the 100-year-old man who climbed out of the window. Is that the title of the book? The writing style is very different, but essentially you're going on this trip where you can't predict what is going to happen in this book because she just keeps encountering different people. It turns out her grandmother may have murdered people and buried them in her garden. There's also this backstory of her parents going missing in the Australian outback. Her grandfather is trying to be forced into a home by his new wife, so she's dealing with that. She doesn't have any money, so she ends up sleeping in her grandma's accountant's camper van. There is a dog in this, a Pomeranian. He's not in it as much as I had hoped, but he is in there. And all this is to say that I find this quite a difficult book to review because it is so bizarre. But I had a really good time with it. It also has heart to it as well, and we do touch on quite a difficult moment where she's remembering her biological father, someone who she doesn't really consider to be her dad, who is a strange character who sometimes tries to follow her, and she has this disassociation when it comes to memories regarding him, and that at one point led her to talk to animals and imagine that a fish was talking to her, and that definitely reminded me of Portable Veblen because in that we have a talking squirrel, and I was very worried that this talking fish was going to continue throughout the book, and I thought, please let's not go down that path again, but worry not, that does not happen. But I found that part of the story ultimately very touching, and yeah, I don't think that this is a book I'm going to think about a lot. It's probably not going to stay with me because it happens in a rush and a raw, but I am very glad that I spent time with it, that I went on this road trip with her. Thank you very much for the ride, and I would recommend this journey to other people. So that's how I feel about that particular one. As you may be able to hear, I'm feeling a bit better, and I'm hoping to be maybe not in bed, but maybe on bed soon, which is a very important distinction. And I will check back in with you when I have read some more. Hi, it's a couple of days later. I feel like that's the just common introduction to all of these segments. It's a couple of days later. I am, as promised, on bed instead of in bed. I am, however, feeling quite wobbly today, so I'm sorry if I'm not as articulate as usual. Saying that, I'm not sure how articulate I've been throughout this video, but never mind. I have two more books to talk to you about, and one I decided to stop reading halfway through, and one I loved. So let's start with the one that I stopped reading, and that was Black Butterflies by Priscilla Morris. I read about 100 pages of this, and this is, I think, just over 200 pages. Oh no, I lie. No, it's not. It's 270. So I read about a third of it, not half of it. This book is following a woman called Zora who lives in Sarajevo in the early 90s with her husband. Her mum also has a flat there, but she's been living with them during the winter because her flat is not very insulated. There's a lot of unrest and unease, so her husband decides to take her mother to stay with family in Wiltshire in the UK and says, you should really come with us. But she's teaching students and she has an art studio. She doesn't want to go yet, so she says she's going to stay. She will come and join them later because it doesn't really feel very real to her yet. But then not long after they leave, everything shuts down and she can't leave Sarajevo, and she's on her own, well, with other neighbours in her apartment block, but even they begin to leave too. The reason that I decided to stop reading this one is because I got 100 pages in and I didn't really feel like I knew Zora at all. Well, not at all, she is an artist, I know that, but no time is really dedicated to talking about who she is, her past, her relationship with her husband, how she misses him, or her mother, or her fears about the future. Everything feels very immediate, where she's walking at any given time, going to her studio. And I felt like I could picture that. And that is in part because I have been to Sarajevo, and I was trying to separate that in my mind. How would I feel about this book if I didn't have extra context because I have been to this place? And I felt as though a lot of the connection that I had was based on my experience of going there. And it's difficult because I know that this book, because I read the author's note at the back, is inspired by parts of her family history, and therefore it feels very difficult and almost unfair to criticize a book that's based on fact. It feels to me, and I'm not saying that this is what has happened at all, but this is just how I felt, that because this is based on real people, not a lot of work has been put into bringing these people to life on the page because they already exist for the author. I mean, that is so much projection. That is just the feeling that I got when I'm reading it. I'm not saying that's actually what the case is, but that's just how I felt, you know, that a gap had been created. And when I teach writing workshops, I see this happen a lot. I think that's why my brain went there, that sometimes writers can over-explain to a reader because they really want to get their point across. But the flip side of that is that sometimes writers make assumptions about readers' knowledge because the characters already feel so real to them. And I just feel as though there wasn't that groundwork there when it came to character development. And there may be reasons for that. It may be that the author wanted to just write about the moment because that's where the character is existing, and maybe everything feels very unreal in this book because that's how the character felt. So I can see the argument for writing this book in this way, but I just felt as though I could have been reading a book about anybody, and I wanted to really connect with Zora. I wanted to know who she was. I wanted to know everything about her. And I also found myself rolling my eyes a little bit at the fact that what she paints is bridges. It felt like this quite clumsy metaphor for peace and connection. Like she wants to paint these structures that connect places. And again, maybe that's based on what one of her actual family members did. Maybe they actually did paint bridges, in which case it feels weird saying that feels like a clumsy metaphor, but that is also just how I felt. So unfortunately, this one, not for me. However, I love this book, which is Memphis by Tara M. Stringfellow. Tara is a poet, and you can tell that when you read this book because it is just so lyrical. Let me read you a paragraph here. Most of the black women the public pronounced beautiful look like Mama. Black Barbies, bright hair, wavier than usual, petite figures. So when my Auntie August opened that door and I saw that her skin was so dark it reflected all the other colours surrounding it, the yellow of the morning light, the yellow of the door, the peach tan of the calico cat weaving in and out of Maya's short legs, I knew that the aunt I could barely remember was, in and of herself, a small, delicious miracle. There's something about that paragraph that just makes me want to burst into tears. I absolutely loved the writing in this. This is structured quite similarly to Britt Bennett's, oh my goodness, what is that book called? The Vanishing Half. It vanished from my brain clearly for a second. I say the structure is similar because we're following sets of sisters through the generations, and in this we start with Miriam and August. We get glimpses at their mum's life too, and then we see Miriam's daughters, Joan and Maya. The book opens with Miriam, Joan and Maya and their huge dog Wolf appearing on August's doorstep. That's where that extract is from. They have fled their husband / father who is abusive, and they've arrived on August's doorstep seeking shelter. I think that this book is best summarised by the Toni Morrison quote that we've got at the beginning. So let me just read that to you. For years in this country, there was no one for black men to vent their rage on except black women. And for years, black women accepted that rage, even regarded that acceptance as their unpleasant duty. But in doing so, they frequently kicked back, and they never seem to have become the true slave that white women see in their own history. True, the black women did the housework, the drudgery. True, she reared the children, often alone, but she did all of that while occupying a place on the job market, a place her mate could not get or which his pride would not let him accept. And She had nothing to fall back on, not maleness, not whiteness, not ladyhood, not anything. And out of the profound desolation of her reality, she may very well have invented herself. This book is about that invention, and that is in part illustrated by something that's called the gift that the North family say they have. That's this group of women, the North family. So they believe that has been passed down throughout the generations, or at least some of them believe it and some of them are more skeptical. And that means that some of the women have been able to sing beautifully, some of them have been able to illustrate, but they have never allowed themselves or been allowed by society to pursue that in any serious way because of everything else that they have to do instead. It was put so low on their priorities list, and also they were told that art wasn't for them, labour was for them instead, and all this other list of responsibilities. So the older North women have shut that part of themselves down to provide for their families, and as the generations progress, it starts to feel more real that maybe one of the North children will be allowed, will be permitted to pursue this artistic career and make something of themselves in that industry. Another illustration throughout the book is war and conflict. That is peppered throughout each chapter, the constant wars that these women are fighting, and also the men in their lives are fighting too. So even the name, the North family, they are the North family from the South, and that in itself feels like a contradiction that they are grappling with. We have got the Second World War in here, the Gulf War, we've got the Civil Rights Movement and the ongoing white violence against black people. We have got internal fights within families, men fighting women, male violence against women, gang wars are also discussed in here, and it's how that violence affects and permeates these characters. It's all about inherited trauma and what that looks like throughout the decades. There is not a word in this book that I felt was out of place. It's so precise, it's so tender, it's so considered. Content warning for sexual assault on a child. That is not a scene that's discussed in a huge amount of detail, but it is a critical part of the book, and I wanted to mention that. And there are so many subtle things in this book too. So for instance, at the beginning of the book, when they are driving to August's house, one of the children refuses to go inside restaurants because she doesn't want to eat mustard. And it seems like such a small detail, but then you discover the relevance of that later, and it's not even something that's made a big deal out of. It's this small mention in a sentence, but you can link it back and think, oh, okay, I understand that now. It's all about noticing these linking patterns from very minute things to huge historic societal changes. And another subtle thing that I loved about this book is at the beginning quite a few characters enjoy reading, and the books that they're reading are by white authors, and this isn't, I don't think, commented on within the book, but given that theme of this book is about the movement towards the uplifting of and the blossoming of black artistic talent, it's that movement away from just predominantly white canon into all of this amazing possibility from these black characters, and I love that movement too. So yes, I thought that this book was so measured and so well crafted, and I would very much recommend it. I will come back to you when I have read something more. Should we say it all together? It's a couple of days later, because it is a couple of days later, and what am I here to do? I am here to talk to you about 2 more books. You can't say that this video doesn't have a pattern and continuity. Where are those books? Oh, I put them on the floor. That wasn't very helpful. Okay, they are down here. So I've read 2 of the shorter ones, I think, from this long list. So I've read Wandering Souls and Cursed Bread. Let's talk about Cursed Bread first. This is Sophie Mackintosh's third novel, I think. Yes, it's her third novel. And I read her first one, which was The Water Cure, which I enjoyed the style of and was keen to read other things that she had written, but at the time that particular book wasn't a favourite. I was very excited by the premise of this book, which is about a village that is poisoned by bread, and in this we're following Elodie, who is the baker's wife. I don't believe that any time period is mentioned in the text itself, but at the end it says that it's inspired by a real life event in 1951 in France when a community was poisoned by bread. There isn't anything to ground the narrative in a specific time, and I enjoyed that apart from the author's note at the end. I really, really like that because some of this book feels very archaic. It feels like you could be reading historical fiction from way back when, and then there might be a mention of a car and you think, oh, no, it must be much more modern day. And it has this slippery feeling, like the novel doesn't want you to grasp hold of it. It doesn't want to be caught. It's running a step ahead of you, almost like it's made out of water. And that's kind of how I felt about her first novel too. It's shifting all the time. It is a shapeshifter. And that reminded me of Indelicacy by Amina Kane, which was one of my favourite books of last year. It is told from the point of view of this woman who works in a gallery, wants to be an author, and is really taking care to observe everything around her. But that again feels like it could be set in the 1800s, but then sometimes there'll be terminology which makes you think it's almost set right now. And I enjoyed the non-concrete nature of that. So that aspect of this book I liked. As I said, we're following Elodie. She is the baker's wife. She's quite bored with her life. Her husband also seems to be quite bored with his life. He clearly has a wandering eye. She becomes attached to this new woman who comes to town and she's completely obsessed with her. There was something about that that reminded me of Gatsby, like the glitz and glamour of this woman who has moved here, and she is just so obsessed because it takes her out of her mundane existence. She wants to be her, and it goes on from there. I don't want to say too much more about it because there isn't much plot in this book. There are elements in here that reminded me of horror films. We get horses that are dying and eerie things that are going on. But again, nothing feels hugely concrete. It's almost like this world is changing, like it's dripping paint around her. And the thing is, I really love reading books that feel quite uncertain and that feel as though you have to do a lot of detective work to pick up on clues and piece it all together and make sense of it. I adore that, but I only adore that when I feel as though I have complete faith in the way that this book is written. You know, that these Easter eggs are deliberately being left for me to find. I am supposed to be gathering them together, and once I do that, I will have greater knowledge and appreciation of what this text is trying to do. But I didn't really feel as though I had that strong faith when I was reading it. It just felt as though we were all trying to figure out this book together. Everything felt a little bit too underwater and too murky, and I didn't feel satisfied when I finished it. There were parts of this that I really liked, like with her first novel. I enjoyed the writing style in parts, and I thought it was very beautiful. Beautiful is a word that tends to mean different things to different people, but I found parts of this writing quite beautiful, but just overall it didn't come together in the way that I had hoped. So I liked it, but I didn't love it. Then I read Wandering Souls by Cecile Pin. This is a story of three siblings, Anne, Tan and Min, and they have left Vietnam not long after American troops have left, and they've been sent on a boat by their family to go to Hong Kong, and then from there they travel to the UK. They wanted to go to the States, but they were denied entry there, so they end up in the UK during Thatcher's time, and we're chronicling all of that. Well, she is chronicling that, we are following her. And her family, the rest of her family, her parents and her other siblings, their plan is to follow them a couple of weeks later, but their boat doesn't make it, and Anne, our narrator, identifies their bodies on a beach. It is a really upsetting read, and this is based on Cecile Pin's family. It's not where each character is based on a specific individual in her family history, and the storyline is different to the family history in that her family left Vietnam and went to, I think, Thailand and then France, and she's grown up in France and now lives in the UK. I think that is correct. So it is taking inspiration from it, but isn't following everything to a T. The narrative in this is very fragmented. So we're following Anne initially, and then we get the voice of Dao, who's her brother who died, and he's watching over them as a ghost. And then we also get an author's voice who is writing about creating this book. And at first I thought that was Cecile Pin's voice, and in many ways it is her experience, obviously, of creating this book, but it turns out that another character in this text is writing this book. We also get government documents from the time, such as information on Thatcher not wanting to accept refugees from Vietnam. And then we also look at racism during COVID, and we also look at more recent immigration experiences of immigrants from Vietnam. At first, I wasn't sure about the structure of this book and it darting between so many different forms. It felt a bit, well, I guess it felt a bit all over the place. It felt as though, okay, I'm going to try and patchwork all of this together. Let me gather everything and present everything to you as a reader, and then you can make of it what you will. But the longer the book went on for, the more I appreciated the structure, and I thought that it actually worked really well. I think what I mean is, at the beginning I thought this could be a bit gimmicky, but it is not gimmicky, and everything is there for a reason, and I ended up absolutely loving this book. It's clearly very heavily influenced by Han Kang's Human Acts, and it also reminded me in places of Maggie Nelson as well, which would make sense because she has included a quote from Maggie Nelson's Red Parts at the beginning. Watching their little bodies, I wondered where grief gets lodged in such small vessels. I think the structure of this book and having so many different voices, as well as creating this wonderful tapestry, means that it reflects the overwhelm that I'm sure a writer feels when trying to do such a large project as this, you know, trying to do it justice and wanting to give voice to family members and also others who have been immigrants and have gone through things like this. The pressure to encapsulate everything and explain everything in the way that you want to, you know, that's a lot of pressure for a writer to put on themselves, but it also reflects the pressure put on not just writers but individuals to tell their story, to be articulate about it, to condense it into a small, relatively small book or conversation or statement. Please do encapsulate your whole existence and explain this really complex, traumatic thing in a way that we can understand. I feel like that is demanded of so many people with regard to so many different issues, and again, that is an overwhelming and difficult thing to be able to do. And I think that this book has achieved what it set out to do, and I loved reading it. It's not an easy read in places, obviously, but I thought that it was brilliant and I really, really liked it. So I would recommend that one very much. Okay, I found some footage on my computer the other day of a walk that I went on Hampstead Heath a couple of weeks ago. So I'm going to insert that here, and then I will come back to you to talk to you about, all together again, a few more books when I've read some more. So I will see you in a couple of days. Hi, are you still here? If you're still here, thanks. And also, I'm impressed. It is a few days later and I'm properly dressed and I'm wearing makeup and I have a wig on and I'm feeling a lot better, which is nice. This is going to be the final update from me because I'm filming this on the Sunday try that again. I'm filming this on the Sunday that this video goes up. Sunday is my upload day, so this is the cutoff for this video. So let me update you. I have read Trespasses by Louise Kennedy. I decided to listen to this one on audio, and I would definitely recommend the listening experience. I thought that it was really well narrated. This is about a Catholic teacher called Kushla who starts having an affair with a man she's not really supposed to be having an affair with. She works also in a pub that her brother runs, and we're looking at her family relationships and the tensions there, and also the relationship that she has struck up with one of her students, which was a very heartwarming relationship. I really enjoyed this part of the book. I thought that this book was good. I thought it was assured. I thought that the writing was very confident, but I found this book really predictable. I predicted the ending from not that far into it, and also the twist that came with that ending as well. So for me, it felt as though I was getting towards the end just to confirm my suspicions, and nothing about it surprised me, and that was a letdown because you do want to be surprised by a book. So I like this book and I think that it's good, but it's not one of my favourites from this list. And then the final two books, the last two books out of the 16, I haven't finished yet, so I'm going to talk about them, but obviously take this with the knowledge that I'm not done with them yet. So I decided to listen to Fire Rush by Jacqueline Crooks, and please listen to this one on audio if you can. The narration is so brilliant. I know that this prize is not about how great is the audiobook version, but just from a listening perspective, a reader's perspective, outside of any thoughts to do with this prize, the experience of listening to this is a joy because it's about music. This is a book about music, and there's music in the audiobook. The main character, you may sing sometimes, and she sings in this too, and there's just such a musicality to the text itself that it lends itself well to being read out loud. This is, on the surface, not really a book that I would think I would love because it's about music. I tend just not to enjoy books about music that much. I've never been tempted to pick up Daisy Jones and the Six. Opal and Nev was longlisted for the Women's Prize. Was that last year? And I just wasn't keen to pick that one up either. I don't know what it is. I know that some people feel that way about books that are about art. Maybe it's the description of something that is another art form that you can't experience personally while reading it, and maybe that's why I think the audiobook is so great here, because you get a further glimpse into that. Anyway, what's it about? It's about a woman called Yume, who is a young black woman, and she is really into dub music, and she enjoys going to raves, and then she'll go to a music shop on the way home from the rave to talk about music with her friend who works there. She has two friends that she loves as well, Ruma and Asase. They all live in London, and she, on one of these club nights, meets a man called Moose who she falls in love with, and this leads her into more political discussions, and also, I believe as the book continues, we get into police riots, marches, protests, and how music helps you may connect with her Jamaican ancestry, and also enables her to get her message across to other people. Basically how music connects everything. So that's the premise of this book. I really enjoy the way that it's written, but because of the really heavy music focus of this book, I don't think that this is going to be a favorite of mine, just because that's not what I'm drawn to in general, but I love other aspects of this text. And then I have read about 120 pages of David Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. This one is over 500 pages, and I could have raced to finish these two for this video, but I don't want to do the books a disservice, so I just want to finish reading them, you know, at my own pace. This, as I said, is based on David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, and I remembered more about that text than I thought I would as I was reading it, and could see the parallels and which characters were based on other characters, and I thought that that was really fun. This is one of those cases where I'm reading the book and I'm enjoying it, and I'm appreciating it. And I'm thinking, this book is so well crafted, so much time and energy has been put into every single sentence. It's taking its time. It's not afraid to take its time, which means that it has this confidence about it that I admire, and that in turn gives me faith about the narrative in general. Going back to what I was saying about Cursed Bread, like, I have so much faith in the narrative voice here, the way this book is written, and how it's all being thought out. I feel quite similarly to how I felt about Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead. Again, a sweeping book that covers so many generations. Well, this is covering one generation because we're following one person's life, but covering so much ground, is allowing itself to delve into the small details while covering this huge distance. And I really enjoyed that one, thought it was a masterpiece, but there was a spark missing from it for me, and I'm feeling that with this as well. It's brilliant, and I can't deny that it's brilliant, but there isn't that roughness, that edge that really sparks something and gives you that enthusiasm to want to go back to the book and read it. And that might be because you love a particular character, or you love the writing style, or X, Y, Z. Everything about this feels really polished and safe, but there isn't that element that's speaking to my soul, at least not yet in the 120 pages that I have read. I think this could easily win the Women's Prize. There is a lot about it that's making me think of Ruth Ozeki's book that won last year, in that we're following a young man. I haven't even said what this is about, really. I've just said it's based on David Copperfield. This is basically a novel that's exploring poverty in Appalachia, in the mountains of Virginia, and looking at the consequences for a particular child who's born into that situation, and then following the trajectory of that throughout his life, which is what David Copperfield was about as well. So The Book of Form and Emptiness was very different, but we were following the life of one young boy and how his parents' decisions were having a great impact on his life, and he was struggling to find agency. So those are the comparisons that I am drawing. And it doesn't mean that this shouldn't win because there are similarities with last year's book, but that's just where my mind went when I was reading it. I can definitely see this book being shortlisted. In fact, I predict that it will be shortlisted, and I could definitely see it winning too. But I don't think, as it stands, this would be my favourite from the entire long list, you know, my personal favourite. So let's put a list together with my personal favourites from this year's long list, and also what I will do with these two books, The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell and Glory by NoViolet Bulawayo. I will link my reviews of these two books in the description box down below, because I have talked a lot in this video. As I said, I didn't really enjoy this one. It didn't work for me personally, and Maggie's book I did really enjoy, but it's not one of my favourites by her, and I thought that it kind of sank a bit in the middle. The pacing was a little bit off. It was saved by the ending, but I don't think that the ending uplifted the rest of the novel enough for me to put it on my personal shortlist from these 16 books. So let me just put these 16 books in some kind of rough order based on my personal taste. Okay, that was quite tricky. So massive respect to everybody who has been longlisted for this prize, and these are just my personal thoughts. I am but one person. So at the bottom of the list of 16 for me, we've got the ones that I didn't particularly gel with. So that's Glory by NoViolet Bulawayo. These two books that I ultimately decided weren't for me, but I will revisit them if they are shortlisted. So that's Stone Blind by Natalie Haynes and Pod by Laline Paull. So that's those two. Then after that, we have got Black Butterflies by Priscilla Morris. We're going up, obviously, towards my favourites. Then Homesick by Jennifer Croft. Above that, we have Trespasses by Louise Kennedy. Then The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. A tentative placement for the next one because I haven't finished it yet, but that is Fire Rush by Jacqueline Crooks. And then on top of that, we have The Dog of the North by Elizabeth McKenzie, which is my surprise enjoyment from this year's list. Very delighted to have loved that one. Then we're moving into the top 6. So 6 books will be shortlisted. This is my personal shortlist here. On my shortlist, I think I have to put Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver, even though I haven't finished it yet, because I am so impressed by the writing of this. and the craftsmanship. I can't deny those things, even though I said it didn't have that edge yet, that maybe it will have the more I continue. Even without that, I think it has to be in my top 6. So that for me will be number 6. Number 5, I'm putting The Bandit Queens by Parini Shroff. Number 4, and can I just say, my personal shortlist, we could rejig it any other day. This is just how I feel today. Number 4, I'm a Fan by Sheena Patel. Number 3, Memphis by Tara M. Stringfellow. Number 2, Cecile Pin's Wandering Souls. And then number 1, Children of Paradise by Camilla Grudova. Now, you know when you read something and you picture it in your head? So I was picturing the cinema that I used to go to when I grew up. And I recently read that Camilla works in a cinema as an usher. And she works at the Cameo in Edinburgh, which was my local cinema when I lived in Edinburgh. And it has since, I think, been bought by Picture House, which does reflect something that happens in this book too. And I can totally picture that cinema now also. So when I reread this, which I may do in the future, I will picture that one too. It's a creepy old cinema, great setting and great inspiration for a book like this. So these 6 are my personal shortlist. And I would predict that many of these will be on the actual shortlist. I don't know what the judges are thinking, but this is what I would like to see on the shortlist personally. And obviously I would like Children of Paradise to win because that's my particular favourite. At least today, it's my particular favourite. But I predict that either Wandering Souls or Demon Copperhead is going to win. That's how I feel today. And again, maybe I will feel differently if you ask me tomorrow. The shortlist isn't going to be announced for quite a while because the long list was only announced this week, so you can follow the Women's Prize if you want to keep on top of all of the announcements. But I will definitely come back in a video and talk about the shortlist when that is announced in a couple of months' time, and I will probably be reviewing the shortlist in written form for Toast as well, again, a couple of months down the line. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you're new to my channel and you enjoyed this video, you could subscribe. That would be lovely. And if you enjoy my content and you would like to consider supporting me on Patreon, that'd be very kind. Link to that is in the description box down below. Support on Patreon means that I can keep creating free content for everybody on here, and it also funds my time to make it accessible and all of that good stuff. Thanks again to the Women's Prize for sending me review copies of these books. I would love to know which ones you have read or which ones you would like to read in the future, and I will see you for another video next week. I think I might go have a nap now. Sending lots of love to you all. Goodbye.